the Tennessee Titans' biggest decision makers are skipping Shedeur Sanders' Pro Day. And that tells you everything you need to know about what the Titans are doing at the top of the NFL draft. That and more on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland, Titans fans. Today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On today's episode, we're recapping everything that the Tennessee Titans had to say at the league meetings that took place. We heard about Shedeur Sanders. We heard about Cam Ward. We heard about Will Levis, L'Jarius Sneed, Treylon, Burks, a ton of updates. I'm going to bring all the information that you need to know directly to you on today's show. We'll start with the conversation about Shedeur Sanders and how the Tennessee Titans are, for the most part, skipping his Pro Day. I'll get into all of that first. Do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one, because there's tons of big information popping up all the time this time of year, like today with the league meetings. And the draft is right around the corner. I'm going to be getting into my 2025 Locked On Titans NFL Draft Preview Series, where we go through 180 to 200 different prospects, day one, day two, day three options for the Titans. So you aren't going to want to miss that. Again, make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. But with that in mind, we do got to talk about this Shedeur Sanders story. And while I feel very convinced, and a lot of people that I trust feel very convinced, that the Tennessee Titans are going to be selecting Cam Ward, they are continuing to do their due diligence, and that would include checking in with Shedeur Sanders, who also could be an option for the Titans if things don't go as we necessarily think they will. But the Titans are definitely taking a different approach with Shedeur Sanders than they are with Cam Ward. And I know that a lot of people will tell you that it doesn't mean much, and quite frankly, I disagree. I think it does mean something. I think it does show you the Titans' interest level here and what's going to happen. Now, what exactly is happening? So, Shedeur Sanders' Pro Day at Colorado, and remember, this is Travis Hunter's Pro Day as well, not just Shedeur Sanders. Travis Hunter, another guy who should be in the conversation for the number one pick for the Titans. But that's going to take place on Friday, April the 4th. But Chad Brinker, the president of football operations for the Titans, and the top name on the football side of the business, and then Brian Callahan, the head coach of the team, are not going to be at Shedeur Sanders' Pro Day. Now, I don't know why they're not going to be there or what they're going to be doing instead. That could probably tell us a lot about this. But at the end of the day, they're not going. And if you remember Cam Ward's Pro Day last week, Mike Borgonzi, Chad Brinker, Brian Callahan, Bo Hardigree, Nick Holtz, scouts, like Burke Nihill was there. He's like on the business side, the president of the team overall. So to me, that tells you everything you need to know. The Titans media group, like the people who work for the team, the social media team, had their cameras and, the media personnel and Coach Mack and Amy, like the Titans put on the whole parade for Cam Ward's Pro Day. And now the head coach and the president of football operations aren't even going. Now, you could say, hey, they know everything they need to know about these guys. They've scouted them. They've had time with them. They've met with them at the combine. They did the 30 visit a couple of weeks ago. There's going to be a private workout with Shedeur Sanders on the 9th of April. And all of the Titans folks are expected to attend that. So you can, say it's no big. The Titans media wanted footage of Cam Ward interacting with Brian Callahan, of Cam Ward interacting with Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi. And now we got, the the picture of Brian Callahan and Cam Ward laughing together. And then we get the video of Cam Ward hitting the rollout crossbody throw and telling Borgonzi and Brinker, I'm solidifying it today. We have that stuff now. That's going to be great stuff when the Titans draft Cam Ward. So I'm sorry. Some may disagree, and that's fine. My opinion, it definitely does mean something that the head coach and the president of football operations aren't going to Shedeur Sanders' pro day and Travis Hunter's pro day. So take that for what you will, but I think they're telling us something there. And I also want to talk about a comment that Brian Callahan had about Shedeur Sanders that I found pretty interesting, quite frankly. Brian Callahan said about Shedeur Sanders and his father, Dion, it's not a bad thing, and this is courtesy of Teron Davenport. It's not a bad thing that his dad has been around. I think he's pretty good at what he does. It'll be an adjustment for him to enter the NFL and not be with his dad will be something he has to work through. Okay, look, this is not scandalous. This is not some crazy comment or anything that, should be run by all the national media and everything like that. It's not that crazy. But where he says to enter the NFL and not being with his dad will be something he has to work through. I'm sorry, but that's telling. The fact that he thinks that not having his dad as his coach is some, big adjustment he'll have to make going to the NFL level, that's interesting. Now, the question is, do you believe that? Now, Brian Callahan talked about Cam Ward, and we'll talk about some of the comments. But he talked about Cam Ward in the lens of, leadership and going to different programs like he had to go to and transferring and stuff. Well, you could look at Shedeur Sanders and say, well, he was at Jackson State and then he went to Colorado and he revolutionized both those programs. So why would we be worried about how he fits into a locker room and how he comes into a new program? But the reality is his dad was his coach for both of those. He didn't go into Miami's locker room like Cam Ward did, where his daddy wasn't his head coach and telling you're the starting quarterback, you're the leader, and if you go against my son, you're going against me. That's the culture there. You're like anybody who's ever played with a coach's son for the most part knows how that goes. That's the politics of it. So I'm just saying it's a different beast entirely to come into a locker room where the head coach isn't your dad. You have way of a different vibe when you're doing something like that than Cam Ward, who transferred from Washington or transferred from Incarnate Word to Washington and then Washington to Miami and captured the locker room and the love of his teammates every time without the natural, his dad's the coach, we got to follow him, Like, I'm sorry, that's part of human nature. There's no way to ignore that. So I found that comment very, very interesting at the end of the day. Who's going to be the better leader? Who's going to come in and take over the locker room right away? Can Shedeur do that without his dad being the coach? Brian Callahan didn't outright come out and ask that question, but I am, And you have to think from him mentioning that, is that something Brian Callahan's thinking about as well? Plus, Chad Brinker, Green Bay, Jordan Love, Mike Borgonzi, Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, Brian Callahan, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow. But the guys who are actually going to make the decision of who is getting picked with the number one pick are two guys who went with guys who are more like Cam Ward than like Shedeur Sanders. So I'm sorry. I have all the information that I need. I feel confident, and I've been telling you, Cam Ward's going to be the pick. And Brian Callahan had a lot of great things to say about Cam Ward on Monday. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it is easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending, all in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. I personally love using Monarch, and getting Monarch right now is a perfect time. Just got done dealing with taxes and all that. Have a great understanding of where my money's at. So now is a perfect place to start. you never really realize just how much you're spending on stuff like food delivery and online shopping and stuff like that. But Monarch Money can show you and help you budget smarter and save more. Everything you need to know all in one app is super convenient. Make managing your money much smoother than ever with a partner like Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We're breaking down all of the Titans news coming out of the league meetings. We talk about the Titans skipping Shedeur Sanders Pro Day and why some people may not think so, but I think it's an indication that they're not as interested as some people may hope they would be. But now I want to talk about who I think they're actually interested in and who will actually be the pick, and it's Cam Ward, because Brian Callahan had a ton to say about Cam Ward. Now, basically every Titans beat reporter put out the same exact quotes, blah, blah, blah. But do want to give credit to Jim Wyatt of TennesseeTitans.com, the team beat reporter, for some of the quotations here that we're using. But again, Brian Callahan talked about Cam Ward, and he mentioned some of the things that he liked. But he also mentioned that the Titans are about 2 weeks away from making their decision. And that's something that was said by Mike Borgonzi as well. And look, I am going to remain consistent on this. I have said throughout that I do not buy these fake timelines the Titans are telling us. Now, what I will compare this to, if you're an adult, if you're a child, if you're in high school or you're in college or something, you may not understand this. All right? You may not. Your worldview may be, I wouldn't do that. No, I know what I want. I'm going to get it. But as someone who's purchased cars, houses, gone on vacations, expensive vacations. Well, expensive for me. I'm sure to somebody it would be a cheap vacation, but to me, they've been expensive. When you make big purchases, whether or not you have the feeling or not, you owe it to yourself to go through the process. So when you're buying a house, when I bought this house that I'm recording in right now, we saw 4 or 5 different houses, went and toured them, looked at them, blah, blah, blah. But I knew this was the first house. This house right here was the first house that we looked at. And I knew it. This is the one. It's the studio, the layout, the open concept, the backyard. Yep, this is the house I want. But I didn't stop. I didn't say, yep, this is the house I want. We're done. Let's buy. That's not what you do. You go out and you look at other houses. When you buy a car, you don't just try one car and say, this is the car. You got to go test drive other stuff. Not because you don't actually love the car, not because you're skeptical of whether you really want it, but you owe it to yourself. Hey, what kind of rate can I get at other dealership? What kind of rate can I get on other cars? What kind of features? How does the car drive? Does it handle the way that I want? The interior, the rims, does it have everything that I want? And sometimes, even if you have I went on college visits when I went to college, and I loved Ohio University. It's why I went there. But I went to some other places that I didn't like as much. And it's not just about what you like, it's about what you don't like. And also for the Titans, keep this in mind. These scouting reports that they have on these players and this information they have on these players comes back up in free agency later when these players think the Titans just got Curtis Jacobs off waivers. He was an undrafted free agent last year out of Penn State. Did the Titans draft Curtis Jacobs last year? No, but their scouting report on him from the draft process is what led them to the decision to pick him up on waivers. So again, I think it's clear that Mike Borgonzi, when he wakes up in the morning and when he goes to bed at night, he knows who he wants. He knows what house he will buy. He knows what car he would rent. He knows what spot he would go to on vacation. But that doesn't mean you stop your research. You owe it to yourself to have a good process. So that's what the Titans are doing when they say, oh, we're still 2 weeks away. Oh, there's no leader in the clubhouse for the pick. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. But what they're doing is, if they say Cam Ward's the pick, we're done right now, then why would you be doing all these other things? Why would Shedeur Sanders give you the time of day if you've already announced that you're not picking him? Also, take this into account. The Titans have to give themselves a little bit of clearance. Something crazy happens. Knock on wood. I'm not trying to manifest this, but crazy things happen. What if Cam Ward gets in legal trouble? What if he has a health scare? Like, there are plenty of reasons and things that could happen in this crazy life that would totally drastically change what the Titans should do at the top between now and then. Totally change. So you don't speak in absolutes. You don't in March say this is our pick for the end of April. Even if you know in your head, even if you know in your heart, you don't announce it publicly. You don't stop the research process. And if you are someone who's young, who doesn't agree with that or whatever, take advice from Uncle Ty. All right. You always see it through, go the distance on your research, even if you feel like you have your mind made up. There you go. But with that being said, Brian Callahan talked about Cam Ward and where he's at right now. And he talked about the process. He said, quote, I think you do your due diligence. You weigh whatever it is that is being presented. If a trade offer is something you feel like is beyond the value that you would ever have thought you could get, that's one thing. But you also have to look at, what does a potential franchise quarterback look like? And if you think they're that good and they're that type of player, those guys to me are priceless. There is no price that you can put on those players. If you think they are that caliber of quarterback, you have to balance all those things. And he said, you saw flashes at Washington State. Maybe it's a talent disparity. I don't think there is just some crazy swing in talent, but you saw the flashes. And then all of a sudden he gets to Miami, and then you saw it consistently. And I think that just comes from playing. I think that's why these guys have stayed in school longer, who are playing 4 and 5 years. And I think it's helping them because they're getting chances to get more reps and more opportunities. You see their game sort of smooth out, become more consistent, become more pro-ready is the best way to put it. So you see that progression. You see his decision-making become more consistent. You see the accuracy become more consistent over the course of his career. It's been really fun. I think I've watched every snap he's played. So it's been cool to see that real progression to where he is at now to where he came from. He's made a lot of really impressive improvements over his career so far. You compare those comments with some other comments that we got from other teams, the Cleveland Browns and the New York Giants. Both of them have come out recently and said things that would lead you to believe that they know that the Tennessee Titans are picking Cam Ward, number 1 overall. So, what was said? The New York Giants got a little statement here from their owner, I do believe that it was. Second here, technical difficulties as I'm trying to load the quote that I have here for you. But anyways, Giants owner talked about not having the opportunity to get up and get the quarterback. The Browns owner talked about not forcing it. You know what I mean? They're both telling you, when you hear from both of those folks, the Browns said, Andrew Berry, the GM of the Browns, said it's unlikely that they'll trade up to number 1 in the draft with Cam Ward. The owner of the Browns said it would be nice to have a quarterback, but we're not going to force it. And you could replace quarterback with Cam Ward there, in my opinion. Like, they're telling you, the Giants and the Browns are both telling you what they think. And they don't think that Cam Ward is going to be available. So there you go. I mean, there are people out there who want to deny it. There are people out there who just don't want to accept what the reality is here. But the Tennessee Titans are taking Cam Ward. It's going to happen. Like that. Like I'm just telling you that's what's going to happen here. And they aren't going to come out and say it directly because, well, they don't want to ruin the TV show. At the end of the day, it's entertainment, and they don't want to ruin it. So, Browns, it's unlikely we trade up to draft Cam Ward. Giants, sounding very much like they're going to take a non-quarterback. The glowing comments about Cam Ward, skipping Shedeur Sanders' pro day. Like, I'm sorry, guys, you have all the information you want, all the information you need. And if you don't want to accept that Cam Ward is the top pick for the Titans, then I don't know what to tell you anymore. You're just kicking and crying and screaming on the grocery store floor at this point. But we got a ton of updates on other players on the roster from Brian Callahan. We'll talk about that. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. March Madness is here, and quite frankly, it's almost gone. And FanDuel is still giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the nets. For me, I've been backing the favorites all along, and I can back them easier than ever on FanDuel with spreads, totals, game props. I love the dog in a day bet that FanDuel had during the tournament this year. It was absolutely so much fun. There's still games to go, so make sure that you get in on the action now. The FanDuel app is simple. It's easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about the Titans skipping Shedeur Sanders' pro day in a way. We talked about the Cam Ward quotes and why I think the Titans are just playing along with the NFL to not ruin the surprise. But now I want to talk about some major updates we got on other players on the roster and players that we haven't had a ton of time to really talk about or haven't really gotten updates on in quite some time. Will Levis, L'Jarius Sneed, Treylon Burks, J.C. Latham, the young linebackers, Lloyd Cushenberry. We'll start with the Will Levis stuff because there's been a ton of speculation about Will Levis being traded. We even got some rumors and reports last week that teams have had some conversations about Will Levis or something like that. Well, the Tennessee Titans president of football operations, Chad Brinker, came out and said that's not true. I think it was an article he did with Jim Wyatt. He said, we have not had conversations about Will Levis. We have not called any teams about Will Levis. Will Levis is on this team. He's going to have the opportunity to start next year, blah, 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 blah. All right. So here's a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. I think, number one, yeah, right. I'm sorry, but I am putting it at less than 10% that Will Levis is on the roster by week 1. Yeah, right. Okay? You cannot have Cam Ward and Will Levis in the same locker room. The politics, the human dynamic, it's just a disaster waiting to happen. I just refuse to believe that that's a long-term solution. However, if the Titans are not getting adequate value on a trade on draft night, they may wait for an injury to happen during camp or during the summer. They may take it up until a team makes roster cuts and decides, hey, we'd rather have Will Levis as the backup over this guy that we signed. We're going to cut him. The Titans have 2 years of control for Will Levis. There's no reason to come out there right now and say we are trading Will Levis because of a couple of different things. Remember what I just said about Cam Ward and why the Titans would be dumb to announce it right now. What if Cam Ward has something happen? Medical, legal, who knows? And then the Titans can't pick Cam Ward number 1. They go with Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, and then who's playing quarterback? Well, now you might have to roll with Will Levis in a competition with the other guys you got. The Titans may have to pivot and trade for Kirk Cousins. You know what I mean? Something like that. I don't think those things are going to happen. I don't want those things to happen. But we can't rule it out. Again, this life is crazy. So, I mean, aliens could abduct Cam Ward tomorrow. And then what do? So, for that reason, it would be foolish to come out right now while Will Levis is on the roster and working to get better. It would be foolish to come out and say, we're trading Will Levis. Yeah, we're talking about trading Will Levis with X team. Makes no sense at all. So why would you do that? Why would you do that? You wouldn't do that. So anyway, I still don't buy that Will Levis is going to be on this roster week 1 of the season with Cam Ward as the starting quarterback. Not buying that. Sorry. But moving on. L'Jarius Sneed. Brian Callahan said he should be ready by training camp. They need Sneed to bounce back in a big way, especially now that Cheeto is out. You don't have as much depth at cornerback. They need L'Jarius Sneed to be close to worth what they paid for him. Treylon Burks, not going to be ready for training camp, but should be ready for the regular season. I've said it once. I'll say it again. I've said it 1,000 times. Treylon Burks is a ghost. He isn't on this football team. I'll make 0 decisions and 0 conversations based around Treylon Burks' availability here. Like, he's not even on the team, in my opinion. I do not use Treylon Burks as a factor in any of my wide receiver discussions going forward, and haven't for like a year now. When I talk about adding wide receivers, I ignore Treylon Burks' existence entirely. J.C. Latham moving to right tackle. Brian Callahan said he's ready to roll. So we probably wouldn't hear it even if he did, but no complaints from J.C. Latham at this time. Brian Callahan did say he needs Cedric Gray or James Williams, one of those guys, to step up next to Cody Barton. But we've been talking about that all offseason long. It's going to be one veteran, and you need one of your young rookie linebackers to step up and be a starter. And then Lloyd Cushenberry is progressing well. He should be ready for training camp as well. So that's good news. All good news really there, except for Treylon Burks. But who was counting on Treylon Burks anyway? Not me. So anyways, with that being said, that is going to do it for me today, folks. I will be back with you guys tomorrow. But as always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.